Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TIFF Ballet Box. My name is Brad Dean. I'm the director of the TIFF Cinematheque, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to tonight's screening of Anocha Suwichakornpong's By the Time It Gets Dark, and it'll be preceded by one of her short films, Black Mirror. So to begin, we'd like to acknowledge that tonight's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are very grateful to have the opportunity to work within the community. On behalf of TIFF, I'd like to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oreal Paris, and Visa, our public supporters, Ontario Creates, and the Canada Council for the Arts. Also, thank you to Classic FM Radio and Zoomer Radio, our program sponsors at the Cinematheque. So I'm really thrilled to have her here with us. Some of you may have known her film. This film played at Wavelengths a few years ago. She's very prolific in her output of short films. We've included a couple in the program. And I think her two feature films are really impressive. I think she's one of the more distinct voices in contemporary world cinema. I think she's very adventurous in the way she creates her films from a formal perspective as well. And we're really excited to have her here to talk about her films. Please join me in welcoming Anocha Suwichakornpong.
Good evening. Thank you, Brad, for a nice introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. I'm very happy to be presenting my films. So generally, I don't really try to talk about the films before the screenings because I feel it's best sometimes to experience the films without any preconceived ideas. Having said that, maybe I just say something very, very briefly about the feature By the Time It Gets Dark, which is my second feature. And the film is a loose narrative of different lives in contemporary Thailand, but it centers around the massacre which took place in 1976 in Bangkok at Thammasat University, where the paramilitary groups cracked down on the student protesters, and it remains one of a controversial subject in Thailand because to this day no one's been brought to justice, and so it's not historical drama. So it's the film, like I said, it centers around the events, but it is very much connected to what's happening in Thailand nowadays in terms of the social politics and the actually we had an election a few months ago, and we have been under military junta for the last 5 years. So in a way, contemporary Thailand, the years since I would say the last 10 to 15 years, kind of set the country back to the 70s. So that's all I have to say, and I'll be back after the screening to discuss the film. Thank you.
Please welcome back Anocha Suwichakornpong. So I'll start out asking a couple of questions, and then we can open up to the audience for yours. So I want to start out by asking, the film set or centered around a very specific incident in 1976. So I was wondering what inspired you to go back to that moment and kind of the present day, even if that was probably like 2 years ago now.
So I started to develop this project when I was finishing my first feature, but I have to say that maybe I started to take an interest in the politics during the 70s in Thailand because I did a master's in film in New York, and then I went back to Thailand. It was right around 2005 or something like that. And then we had a coup d'etat in Thailand in 2006. And that really changed my whole perspective of what Thailand or the Thai society was about. And the fact that a lot of people supported the military takeover really shocked me. And actually it really changed me in a way. my films prior to that period were, like kind of like small, intimate stories. It didn't really deal with any politics, but yeah, I think that 2006 coup d'état made me question the society and history of Thailand. And so when I made my first feature, which in some way you could say is also a political film, and I was beginning to see how the society was moving into like a kind of very conservative, right wing, supporting the military dictatorship, which is very similar to what happened in the 70s. And so I guess that's how I started the development of the project. Yeah.
And I guess for going back to look at that, were there archives that you worked with? Was it like paper? Is there photographic documentation or audiovisual documentation?
I have to say the massacre of October 6th was quite well documented in terms of photographic evidence, and also actually it was broadcast on television for a while, and then the director of that TV channel was sacked immediately. So they, I actually, I have to say, I have to mention that the subject of the massacre is still not taught in schools. So in universities, you might hear and you might study it if you study political science or politics, but it's up until quite recently, it was not something that people would talk about. When this film came out in 2016, it was the 40th commemoration of the event. So, we had like a lot of discussions and in seminars or events related to the massacre. But before that, for a long time, it was not in the public attention. And so. But the photographs, they were readily available. It's just that no one was doing much with them. Yeah. But now, I have to say, it's really well circulated, and a lot more people who are interested and aware of what happened. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the film is very much about representing this from a more current day perspective. I was wondering what kind of ethical questions you found yourself confronting when confronting this idea of representing the past.
That's I guess that's like the heart of the film, because I really questioned myself a lot during writing, and even the production stage, even the day we were shooting that scene, which was a restaging of the day of the massacre, that I had like all these people, like this. So many of them were students, lying flat on their stomachs. It was really hard for me to shoot, even just, even though it was a total construction. And everyone in the shoot, I have to say, felt this weight as well when we were shooting that scene. So the ethical dilemma is really, I don't know, it's just, I thought, how could I talk about, or make a film about something that I didn't experience, how could I speak on behalf of the others? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because now your film actually becomes a part of the representation of that historically, right? Like in the future, people will go back to this film as well as the other documents too, right?
It's I don't. Yeah, it's a trap, isn't it? I was trying to pose the question about representation, and in the process, made a representation of that. But at the same time, I hope that it does more than, just being a representation, that it raises issues about representation as well. Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I was wondering, because there are these different elements of the film, I was wondering if there was a specific element that you started with, I guess, when you began with the film.
Yeah, I actually started with a character, the one that didn't have a name in the film. But I mean, she has a name in the credits, but in the film she wasn't called, so you wouldn't know her name. The one that keeps changing jobs, and again, that character was loosely based on someone that I met in the course of making a short film, maybe like more than 10 years ago. And that short film is in itself was quite related to the 70s politics in Thailand as well. It was about the takeover of a jeans factory by a group of factory workers. But it was like a film within a film, and I shot in a real factory, and I met this woman who was a factory worker, and she gave birth to this character.
Okay. And I guess since you weren't here last night, maybe we can talk about the carte blanche that you selected, Good Men, Good Women, because I obviously see direct connections in a way between the two films, but maybe now you can have an opportunity to talk about Good Men, Good Women, and if there are any connections as you see it between this film and
I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I took the opportunity to select this film because I felt like there may be some relevance, with regards to By the Time It Gets Dark. I think I was partially inspired, but I was probably not aware of it. And also because yesterday my flight was delayed and I didn't see the beginning, which was the scene that maybe not. I was told that it was not the first shot as I remembered it, but it was a second shot, which is the one in the apartment, and you stop with the camera stop at TV, right, with the Osu film, which is how I remember the film, and this was the image that I had all the time, and I really wanted to see that on the big screen, but I didn't see it, so that was disappointing. But I felt, like yesterday watching it, there were scenes that I felt very, like immediately I was responding to them in a way that I felt like, oh my God, I also had similar scenes, like really similar. Like there was a scene where someone was, putting a poster on, like to that extent. Yeah, but it was, but also the larger question is also about, representation and how you deal with trauma. But also relating to the contemporary. It's not something that is in the past, but it's very much in the present. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can open up to the audience now. If you just raise your hand, and we have a microphone, so if you can just wait for the microphone to reach you, so everyone can hear your question. Do we have anyone yet? No one yet. Come on. Okay, I can ask more questions. So, I guess, there's an interesting line in the film. I think where the character describes the other one as living history, and the response then is she says, "No, I'm a survivor." But it got me thinking in a way, though. I think we're all kind of. She's not wrong in a way, though, because I think we're all living history, or at least we bear the traces of it. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about how we go about dealing with that in the present.
How we go about dealing
going about dealing with the idea that we all bear the traces of this history on us, and how we go about in the present dealing with that.
It's really hard. Yeah. I mean, and it's a hard question, but it's also really hard to deal with because I think in a way, it's like, how do you get on with your life on a day-to-day basis, even when there's like this weight of history, or not even history, something that's happening nowadays, in another part of the world, and how do you cope, with all the weight of, this, while it's happening, right in front of you. I think I don't really quite know how to answer this question, to be honest. It's really, well, on a personal level, for me, and this may seem maybe a little bit indulgent, or but I feel like art, film in this case, is a way of, for me at least, to talk about this and to bring it. Well, I don't mean for my films to be educational or anything like that, but it's to create space for people to think about certain issues or topics, or to be aware of what's happening, and whether, but yeah, it's not meant to educate anyone, but at least I hope if there's anything you can take from watching this film, it's just to think about, actually once you leave the cinema, to think about your relationship to the society in which you're living in, to the past, to the present, and yeah, it's just, I guess that's how I I managed to like go day by day. Yeah.
Something that's also built into it, I guess, that's troubling for me as someone who deals a bit with archives and everything, is the idea of the digital. And then at the end where the film kind of pixelates and kind of shifts. And then you also deal with the ability to change kind of color tones or change kind of these representations in a way.
I was, actually, I was on the verge of saying you have to be a bit like delusional in a way to also even to delude yourself on some level in order for you to get on with your life. Yeah, it's but that in a way is connected to what you're saying about the manipulation of the images and archival. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, now we have some questions.
Hi. I read a bit about the political instability about 10 years ago in the paper, local paper. And I was wondering, you said there was a military coup in 2010 and 2005?
There was one in 2006 and there was one in 2014. But I can give you
what were the reasons for the military coup? I read that like 10 years ago in the Toronto Star newspaper, Thailand was continually having military coups because of supposedly corruption in government level or business, or mainly government.
That's the excuse, I have to say. Thailand changed from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy in 1932, and since then we've had 26 coup d'etats. So I think we may be like the country that has the most coup d'etats in history, and to the point that is so the country is not able to progress because every time there seems to be like that progress, then there would be a military coup backed by a lot of educated, like well-to-do middle-class people. Is really mind-boggling. That's like why I was so shocked, because I had just moved back to Bangkok after I graduated from film school, and then this coup in 2006 was supported by so many people, like people that I knew. They went out on the street giving roses to the army, and I was like, I felt like that my whole world was just turned upside down. But if you ask me why would there be a need for coup d'etat?
Why would the last military coup? Why was
so
supportive? Were they sick of? Did they prefer military coups over?
So I think this is a problem, because a lot of Thai people believe that politicians are really, they're not to be trusted, and of course, there is it's true to a degree, but people would rather do away with the whole system and have the military take over, and then somehow they have a trust in the military rather than like parliamentary system. Yeah. And we had an election last month, and until today, there hasn't been a government formed yet. It doesn't look like we will have one soon, and now people are talking. And it actually was the first election in 5 years, and so many people went out to vote, and still, because actually the military formed a party, and they also entered into the election, and they came second, but they want to form the government, to form a coalition. Is really complicated. I don't think this is place I can talk about like all the reasons why Thai people are like so in love with the army and the coup d'etat, and yeah, it
Like there's
yeah.
no separate form of. I guess it's a choice between more corruption and less corruption under the military.
No. I mean, I don't think you can say the military is not corrupted. They're hugely corrupted. So it's you know, it's not like, but I think a lot of people think that the military are not corrupted, which is not true at all. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have to move on to another question over here.
Hi. When this film was first released, what was the reception like in Thailand? And do you feel like Thai audiences watching the film have a different sort of relationship with the film than like international audiences?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because I mean, first of all, and the October 6th massacre is something that people know of, even though they may not know the details, but they knew of the killings, and so there was a bit more context in that regard. So when the film first came out in Thailand, I think people were in the beginning not sure what to make of it because it didn't deal directly with the massacre itself, and on some level, I think there was an expectation that the film would be kind of biopic, and it's not. But after a while, when more and more people started to question the film and discuss the film, I think it became a little bit more apparent that it was not just about the massacre, but how that issue is related to the politics of nowadays, and everyone who is living in Thailand. I would say we all have this weight, this burden of history, and so I think people did pick up on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time, but hopefully you'll join us again tomorrow afternoon for Mundane History. And I'd just like to thank you for joining us and thank the audience.
Thank you.